Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. Tonight's guest is someone that works for MESN Radio, hosts his own podcast, The Doug Siravo Show, and you can find him on YouTube and his account by searching his name, and you can subscribe to him, and that's Doug Siravo. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Pretty good? All right. We're going to talk some football first and baseball before we get into hockey. So let's start with our favorite football team, the New York Football Giants. How impressed are you with Daniel Jones?
I'm very impressed. I was at work yesterday watching the game, and the one thing I noticed is with Jones, he's a mobile quarterback, and there was a few situations that I was telling my coworkers is if that was Eli right now, there would either be one, he would get sacked and maybe lose the football, or two, he would throw the ball away. So in this NFL, it's good. You need to have a mobile quarterback, and I think the Giants have one.
Yes, I think that is the biggest difference between Jones and Manning. Jones's mobility has really helped this offense, in my opinion. And now they're back at 500. Who would have thought that after them starting 0-2? But it certainly helps that their schedule broke in their favor with the pathetic Redskins coming to town in a close game with the Bucs. That Bucs comeback was very impressive, though. Speaking of surprises, The Bucs are certainly a big surprise. Who do you think is the biggest surprise between the Buccaneers, the 49ers, and the Bills?
I think you could say the Buccaneers because, the Bills have a bright future, obviously, with Josh Allen, and he looked good last year. The Niners looked good last year, but then Jimmy G got hurt. But with the Buccaneers, you just don't know what you're going to have with Jameis Winston. So, yes, I think you could say the Buccaneers are a huge surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not think the Buccaneers were going to be good at all. They arguably should be 3-1 if not for that missed kick against the Giants, but they're 2-2, and they're certainly a surprise early in the season, as well as our Giants and the 49ers and the Bills. And obviously one team in the NFC North that's a surprise is the Detroit Lions. Who do you think is the best team in the NFC North right now?
Right now, I think it's the Green Bay Packers. I'm liking how Rodgers been playing. Obviously, he had that interception to end the game against Philly, but the defense has been playing better for Green Bay, and if they could keep it up, I could see them winning the division.
Yeah, I think you did pick the Packers before the season on the podcast.
I think I did.
I think you did too. I'm trying to think of who you picked in the North. I think it was Green Bay, but yeah, I would have to agree with you, although Chicago's defense is fantastic. Minnesota, they have that reputation of big games. They can't win them because of Cousins, so I don't really think it's Minnesota either. But Minnesota probably has the best roster, but right now I think Green Bay has probably looked the best with their improved defense and their offense. Sputtered at times, but I really liked what I saw against Philly. To me, that even though they lost that game, it was, to me, a step in the right direction for that offense. Even though they were 3-0 going into that game, but they were 3-0 because of their defense, not their offense. And then their offense almost came back to beat Philly. But like you mentioned, Rodgers threw that pick in the end zone that set that win for Philadelphia. The Baltimore Ravens you picked to win the AFC North. They are currently in a tie with the Browns at 2-2, although they lost to the Browns yesterday. What do you make of your pick to win that division so far with the Ravens?
I think the division, if they play better, consistent football. Yesterday was a terrible loss, but I think Cleveland was due for a win, and Beckham it was Landry who put up big points for my fantasy team.
Yeah, Landry was great yesterday.
Hoping Baltimore in that division.
Yeah, that division I think is going to be close between those two teams throughout the year. Baker Mayfield, it's funny because everybody was trashing him the last 3 weeks, so he was due for a big game as well, so don't count out Baker. Another thing that stood out to me yesterday was the Saints defense doing a great job against the Cowboys offense on Sunday Night Football. And obviously the Saints offense really isn't that great without Breeze. I certainly think they're still going to win that division. I even thought that when Breeze got hurt, but I just thought that their schedule kind of broke right for them. And so far it looks like I'm right about the Saints and that The loss of Drew Brees is big, but they really haven't lost any games due to it yet. What do you make of the Saints' 2-game win streak without Drew Brees?
I think it's their division to lose.
Absolutely.
So, despite not having Brees, I think they're in control of that division because obviously you don't know what you're going to get with the Panthers, the Falcons, and right now if the Buccaneers play well, they may be the only threat to the Saints.
Yeah, the Buccaneers are playing great.
The Saints' big threat is themselves. So if they play good football without Brees, they'll be fine.
Yeah, and so far they're doing that, especially with defense and special teams, and obviously Sean Payton is one hell of a coach in the NFL. Let's switch over to baseball real quick. So the regular season's over. Tomorrow night we have the Nationals hosting the Brewers. Who do you like in that game?
Scherzer's pitching, right?
Yes, it's Max Scherzer. I forgot to mention that. And I have no idea who's going from Milwaukee. I don't think they even announced the starter yet.
They didn't. So because of that, I like the Nationals.
I love the Nationals tomorrow night too. I am right there with you. Scherzer. Yes, there's been a couple times where he's flopped in winner go home games. I remember he came out of the bullpen against the Cubs a few years ago and gave up a homer to Baez, and they were home for that game. But I just like the matchup here. The Brewers obviously don't have Yelich. They've been hot, but hot runs sometimes don't last long, and I just think the Nationals are like the easy spot here, and they're, by the way, a minus 180 favorite tomorrow night. And even if they went with Corbin or Strasburg, I would pick them to win too. But you have to go with Scherzer. He's your best guy in a do-or-die game. You go with Scherzer, and I think that Scherzer will be great, and they will win. Your beloved Tampa Bay Rays go to Oakland on Wednesday night. I think that is an absolute toss-up game because it's out in Oakland. I think you guys get the edge with the starting pitcher with Charlie Morton. Bullpens, I think, are even. Offense, I'd give the edge to the Athletics. What do you think the chances are the Rays pull this one out tomorrow? Or I'm sorry, on Wednesday night.
Well, I think they're going to win it 100%.
Wow, you feel good about it. Okay. I think they have a chance.
On a roll. Offense has been playing well. I just don't trust Oakland when it comes to their pitching.
I don't trust Oakland's pitching either. If this game was in Tampa Bay, I feel much better about the Rays' chances. Like I said, I think it's an absolute toss-up. I like the Rays' pitching edge. I think they have the clear advantage in pitching, but Oakland, to me, is the clear advantage in offense. I'm probably not going to give out my pick for that game until Wednesday because, to me, that is an absolute toss-up. Who do you think is the American League MVP right now, or who do you think is going to win it?
Well, my favorite, I was automatically thinking it's going to be Mike Trout. But last night, I was on Twitter, and MLB Network posted something about the MVP. And I saw his stats to do this, not as a cleanup, not as a third, but to do this as a leadoff hitter. I'm picking DJ LeMahieu as my 2019 American League MVP.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, he's been great for the Yankees in the leadoff spot, 100 RBIs or over 100 RBIs. And guess what? Yes, I'm a Yankees fan. I just don't think that LeMahieu is the AL MVP. To me, he's the Yankees MVP. To me, the AL MVP has to be Alex Bregman. He's the best player on the best team in baseball, in the American League. 40 home runs. That guy's just incredible. He's the best player on the Astros, and he's certainly become one of my favorite players in baseball over the last few years. It's fun to watch him play baseball. So I'm going to pick Alex Bregman to win this award, and I think he will win this award. And if Mike Trout didn't get hurt, I think it would have been a more enticing conversation, although Trout is stuck on the Angels, who, by the way, fired their manager today. Looks like they're going to hire your team's former boss, Joe Madden. What do you make about that?
Oh, they said that?
It's not a done deal yet, but Ausmus was fired today, and it looks like Madden's the front runner for that position. I would like that hire for the Angels, obviously. He's a good manager, and I know you like Madden, too. He managed your team, and he did a great job with you guys, too. So what would you make of that hire?
That might be a good move for them.
Great move.
That might be a good move for them. We've seen what he's done with Tampa, the Cubs, bringing the World Championship there. So to get the team to play to its full potential, that's going to be a good move.
Yeah, a very good move. How about the National League MVP? To me, this was a little bit more wide open, especially after Yelich got hurt. I don't think Yelich is going to win it because I think the injury will probably cost him the award. But who do you think is going to win the NL MVP?
At the beginning of the season, I was going Cody Bellinger.
Mm-hmm.
But now that the season's over, and you look at the way the team's finished and who's around the team, Dodgers have star power all over that lineup.
They do.
And I'm looking at the Rookie of the Year, the MVP, Peter Alonso.
Very interesting. Peter Alonso, 86 wins. I think he'll finish in the top 10 in the NL MVP because of his fantastic rookie year and everything. But the Mets didn't make the playoffs, but that's not his fault. Don't get me wrong. That's the bullpen's fault by far, and we know that. And I've documented on this podcast very much. But I have to go with my best player on the best team theory, and I'm going to go with Cody Bellinger. Although a close second to Anthony Rendon, who's going to have a monster payday this offseason. What do you make of the year Anthony Rendon's having for the Nats?
I think he's part of their turnaround, just like Alonso was for the Mets. The Mets were out of it, and they went 46-25 to finish the second half.
Yeah.
Rendon's another key part for the Nationals playoff push.
Yes, absolutely. He's a big part of it. Juan Soto's a big part of it. I think Soto had over 30 home runs this year, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, the pitching staff has to get credit for the Nats. And even for the Mets to have a respectable 86-win season, I know we're touting Alonso here for their offense, but you got to give Jacob deGrom some love. You got to give Noah Syndergaard love. And guess what? I think deGrom's in play for a second straight Cy Young, but he has some competition this time. I don't know if Scherzer's going to win it. It could be Jack Flaherty of the Cardinals because his second half run has reminded me a lot of Jake Arrieta's from a few years back with the Cubs. Do you think deGrom repeats, or do you think it goes to somebody else like Scherzer or Ryu or even Flaherty from the Cardinals?
I think it's deGrom's to lose. He was consistent all year. I think in the beginning you could have said it was Jung Ryu, but he kind of had an inconsistent second half.
Yeah, Ryu had an inconsistent second half, and a lot of people are going to be pointing at that game against the Yankees on a Friday night, and he absolutely flopped in that game. Meanwhile, that game pretty much turned James Paxton's reputation around a little bit from a Yankees perspective. But from a Dodgers perspective with Ryu in that Yankees game, that was not a good look for Ryu, and I think a lot of voters are going to remember that game and back off of Ryu. I don't think Ryu's going to win it. I think the final three for that are going to be Scherzer, Flaherty, and Jacob deGrom. And I won't be surprised at all if deGrom wins that award again. I think the AL Cy Young, I think your boy Charlie Morton has a chance to win it, but I think it's ultimately going to go to an Astro. What do you think?
I think it's going to Garrett Cole.
Wouldn't surprise me. 326 strikeouts on the year and 20 wins. Should be.
He had a great career year for him.
Yeah, like Anthony Rendon, contract year. So I wonder if he'll eventually go back to Houston or sign elsewhere, but we'll save off-season predictions until after the World Series and whatnot. That's when I start to focus in on all that stuff. So let's switch over to the real reason why I have you on the podcast today. One of your favorite sports, which I think is your favorite sport, hockey. You played hockey. You love the NHL. I love doing predictions with hockey, and I'm probably going to do my predictions podcast solo tomorrow night, and it's going to drop. I'm going to go through the divisions and a couple of the awards and whatnot. So let's start in the Metro Division. Who's your pick to win that division?
Surprisingly, I think the top three teams for that division will be Washington, New Jersey, and Philly.
I think two of those three teams are realistic. I think the Devils have a chance to surprise, obviously, as well. I think that division is the deepest in the league, and I think it's going to be the closest division in the league. Do you agree with me about the Metro?
I think so.
I think it's the absolute closest. I don't think there's really a terrible team in the Metro Division. I mean, I think that Columbus is a team that might take a step back, but they are not going to be truly awful like the Senators were last year. Like, I think the Metro Division, I think the last place team in the Metro Division might have 80 points or something like that. Like, I think that division's going to be super close, and I think that the first place winner might have like 100 points rather than like 110 points like we've seen the last few years. But yeah, I think that is going to be by far the closest division in the league. How about the Atlantic?
I think it's Tampa's to lose.
Yeah, sounds about right. Tampa, Toronto, Boston are good teams. Florida, people think will bounce back. I think Buffalo can improve. I don't think Ottawa's going to be good again this year. Red Wings, I'm not so sure where they're going. They've been making weird moves. Who am I missing? Oh, Montreal had a respectable year last year. I'm not so sure about them. And who do you think is the biggest challenger to Tampa, assuming so let's say if Tampa has this great regular season and you say you think they're going to win the division, I think it's very likely Tampa wins that division. Who do you think has the best chance to unseat them if things go wrong for them this year?
Toronto.
I agree. Austin Matthews, despite that situation that he's dealing with right now, John Tavares, they, I think, improved their team so much from last year, and I really think they made all the right moves because I just thought that their defense was weak, and they improved it, and then Mitch Marner's back. So I think that team's in for a really good year. I like Boston, too, because they're just in the final. They have that core there that's been there a while. So I think the Atlantic is top-heavy with those three teams that we just talked about, but the rest of them I'm not so sure. I think that, like I said, the Metro's much better than the Atlantic. Do you agree with me about that?
Yes, there's going to be a lot of improving teams in the Metro.
A lot of improving teams in the Metro. I mean, I think there's a chance we see improved teams in the Atlantic, too, but I think there's a couple bad teams in the Atlantic as well, and two teams I think could be really bad. How about the Central Division? How do you see that shaking out?
Oh, who's in the Central? I think, I'm probably going to go with either Nashville, St. Louis, or Dallas to win.
Those are three really good teams. I think that those teams certainly have a chance to win their division. I wouldn't rule out Colorado. That's a team I think improved in the offseason a lot. They're going to have Cale Makar a full year. So that's another interesting team in that division. Winnipeg was a team that had a good year last year, but I'm not so sure if they're going to be that good again this year. So the Central, I think, is the better division of the Western Conference divisions. Do you agree with me about that? Do you think the Central's better than the Pacific?
100%.
Yup, I totally think that the Central's better. And you have a couple teams in the Central that I think are a little bit rebuilding, like the Blackhawks and the Wild. Those are two teams that might not be that bad, but you never know. Those two teams are sort of rebuilding. They're like those teams in the Metro that are like kind of middling a little bit. Some of them could make the playoffs. Others could go the other way if things go wrong, like the Rangers, Carolina, Islanders. Like some of those teams in the Metro are kind of like Chicago and Minnesota. People are too down on the Wild, I think, because I see a point total projections like from Vegas 69.5, and I thought that was very low. They have some talent on that team. I really like Devin Dubnyk a lot.
Yeah, but Parisi's getting older. He's injured. He hasn't really fulfilled to that contract.
That's very true about
Parisi.
Parisi.
The Devils didn't resign. Because we'd be in a terrible hole right now if we ended up extending Parisi to that 13-year contract that he wanted.
Yeah, that looks like a sort of a good move in retrospect now that the Devils didn't bring him back, because Parisi's game's been in decline for the last couple of years. That's something I kind of just forgot about. And obviously Minnesota signed former Ranger Matt Zuccarello too. So I don't think the Wild are going to be terrible, but I'm not sure if that's a playoff team per se. That's probably more like a 70 or 80 points potentially if things go well there. Pacific Division. I think there's two teams that can win this division. Who do you like to win the Pacific?
It depends who gets off to a good start. I'm either going with Vegas or San Jose.
Those are the two teams I like in that division. Who would you say? Like, if gunpoint, Vegas or San Jose?
I'd probably go with San Jose.
I think it's 50-50 because you have two teams I think are kind of evenly matched. Like, their offenses are really good. Defensively, I think both teams are good. In goal, I think Jones is better than people give him credit for. And then obviously Marc-Andre Fleury took Vegas to the finals a few years ago. And don't forget, San Jose made the final, 3 seasons ago? If I'm not mistaken, or 4 years? 2016. So that was 4 years ago they made the final. And some of those people are still there. You obviously have Pavelski and Brett Burns. I mean, they didn't have Carlson yet, so you can make a case they're a little bit better than they were back then. I mean, some of their guys...
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I think they are too. And some of those guys that were younger back then are in their primes now in San Jose. So, I wouldn't rule out the Sharks to win that division. Obviously, Vegas is going to be a tough out too.
And that means the class of 16 is graduating college this year.
Yeah, that's right. Let's switch over to awards. Who do you like to win the Hart Trophy?
The MVP?
Yes, the MVP.
I'm going to go with Nathan McKinnon.
Good pick. I really like that pick. I thought about McKinnon a lot. I don't know who I'm going to pick yet. That's a really good pick. He's on one of the best teams in the league, in my opinion. He had a great year last year. He has great line mates, good coach. That's just a very good team. I think that's a cup contender in the West. I really, really love that pick. I think he's in the mix. I think both John Tavares and Austin Matthews will be in the mix. Kucherov, I think, has a chance to repeat. If he's healthy, maybe Stamkos. I think that the Hart Trophy is wide open. Your boy Taylor Hall, if he stays healthy, I would not even rule him out to have his second Hart Trophy in 3 years. I think it's so wide open, and you can't forget about Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, the best player in the league, Connor McDavid. There's so many guys that I think could be up for this award. I think it's so wide open. How about the Vezina Trophy?
The best goalie in the league. I'm going to have my goalie, Corey Schneider. I think he's 100% healthy. He says he feels better mentally and physically. So with a good team in front of him, upgraded defense with Subban, and another full year of Vatanen, I think he could really make a case to be a Vezina winner. But realistically, as of today, I'm going with Ben Bishop.
Ben Bishop's not a bad pick. He had a good year last year, helped the Stars make the playoffs last year. Not a bad pick at all. Took the Blues to Game 7. Don't forget, the Blues won that Game 7 last year. You could make a case that that's the team that could have potentially knocked off the Blues before the Blues Stanley Cup final run. So Ben Bishop, not a bad pick. I think Vasilevsky, his former teammate in Tampa Bay, is going to be in play for this. Bobrovsky on Florida, I'm not so sure because guys don't usually live up to the contract in the first year of a big contract in sports, just let alone hockey. I really don't see Bobrovsky being a finalist for the award, but it can't be ruled out. Maybe somebody like I think the Vezina's tough too. To me, here's a good one for you. Carter Hart out of Philadelphia. I'm high on the Flyers this year, and I think Hart's emergence is going to be a big reason why I think that they have a chance to win the Metropolitan Division this year. I think Philly is going to be massively improved. I think that is certainly a top 2 team in the Metro Division, right there with Washington. And I wouldn't rule him out, and I wouldn't rule out Braden Holtby either from the Capitals. And I think that's going to be an interesting race. There's a lot of good goalies in the NHL right now. How about the Calder Trophy? To me, I don't think this is wide open per se. I just think that there's like maybe 4 or 5 guys can win, including guys on our favorite teams.
I'm going with number 86, Jack Hughes.
I think Jack Hughes is going to be great for you guys. I think it's going to... We talked about this on one of my podcasts, I think, last summer, how we think that Kakko, and Jack Hughes, that could be like the junior version of Crosby and Ovechkin. And I think that that's going to bring that rivalry back to life. I really do. I agree with you on that. And I think that's going to be a 2-horse race between Hughes and Kakko, realistically. The Rookie of the Year, I just don't know who to pick. The Norris Trophy...
could be one.
Who?
Cal McCarr.
Oh, Cal McCarr. I forgot about Cal McCarr. He's good. Yeah, maybe a three-horse race. I forgot about Cal McCarr. And I'm really high on the Avalanche, too. So that's another good call. Norris Trophy.
I'm going to go with... You can go with Eric Carlson, Drew Doughty, Brent Burns, Victor Hedman, PK Subban, maybe Shea Weber. But for me, I am going to go with, this may be an underdog pick, but I'm going to go with Roman Josi.
I love that pick. He's really good. I think he's one of the more underrated defensemen in the league. I think that he has a chance to win that award. I think he's the best defenseman on the Predators. That guy is so good. And I think that Subban will be good for you guys in Jersey, but I just think that Yossi's poised for a big season. That's a really good call by you. The Jack Adams Award is an award I missed. I have a feeling I know where you're going with this one.
You do?
Yeah, but I could be wrong.
Well, I have 2 picks. I think John Hines could finally win that award. But my guaranteed pick for that award is going to be Elaine Vigneault.
That's a good one. AV with the Flyers. I think, like you said, we were talking about the Flyers before and how much I like that team. That's a really good call. I think Hines has a chance. I thought Hines should have won it the year that Hall won the Hart Trophy. I thought John Hines was snubbed from that award a few years ago, and I made that known on Twitter. And I think that award has some good candidates. I think Mike Babcock could be in play. I think that Joe Bendar in Colorado could be in play. You obviously have Cooper out in Tampa Bay, Cassidy with the Bruins. I think if the Rangers make the playoffs, you can't rule out Dan Quinn. If the Islanders surprise everybody again, you cannot rule out Barry Trotz with the Islanders. There's so many good candidates for this award as well. But yeah, AV's a good call, and I do think that the Flyers are going to be one of the more improved teams in the league, and I think that's a dark horse Stanley Cup contender if they stay healthy and if they make a couple trades here in season, which I think their general manager is certainly going to do. One last thing before we go. Pressure's on. Make your Stanley Cup final pick.
The one I want will be the New Jersey Devils winning the 1920 Stanley Cup championship. That's what I believe could happen, but realistically, if I were to bet, I'm going to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Very, very, very solid pick. And who do you like in the West?
I like San Jose to finally get there again.
That's actually a realistic Stanley Cup final. I really do like the Maple Leafs this year. I like the Sharks. I think the East, potentially 5 teams can come out of the East. And in the West, I think, is more wide open. I thought the West was wide open last year. I think it's wide open again this year as well. You obviously have the Blues. You have the Predators. You have the Stars. You have the Avalanche. You have the Golden Knights. You have the Sharks. So that's 6 teams I just listed. that I think can realistically make the Stanley Cup final from the Western Conference. All right, it was good to have you on today. Maybe I'll have you on next month, and we'll talk more about hockey and what's going on in the baseball playoffs. And we're going to be at halfway point in the midseason in 4 weeks from now. And that's probably when I'll probably have you on the podcast again. Sounds good?
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.